we all are worried. I'm also worried. I know anytime something could happen.
We're almost live on Facebook. I think we are live. Are we live, Gillian?
Yes, just hold on. Let me double check.
Yeah, we're live.
But yeah. Okay.
Coolio. What's going on? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So welcome to day 2 of the Young African Creative Conference. My name is Dylan Espiri, the founder of Creative Nestlings, a creative network based in Johannesburg, but working all across Africa and the diaspora. We help young African creatives become better at what they're doing and make money and make the world better, a better place to live in and stuff. This conference is an annual, or supposedly an annual gathering of young people, basically to discuss what's happening around them, what challenges they're facing. There are not that many conferences that focus primarily on young people and African youth and stuff. So this conference is supposed to be that space for dialogue around the improving the quality of life for young African creatives and young African people in general. This is in partnership with KQ Hub, which is run by Wabwira, who's also going to be in the conversation. So he'll introduce himself once the panel begins. Yesterday, we had 2 panels around the pulse of the continent, and then we also had one about being young and creative in Africa. And then today is an interesting one around mental health, just generally, but also mental health for creatives and young people in general. We're joined by Nosipho Nxele. I think I'm saying it right. They're saying it right, but she'll correct me if I'm wrong. I'm foreign, so technically, yes, I have one slight excuse. And then we have Shitemi, and then we also have Wabwira. So I'll give the opportunity to introduce themselves, so I don't butcher any statements, and then get caught out on Twitter. Yeah. So Nosipho, would you like to go first?
Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Nosi, as Dylan said. I'm an illustrator from Joburg, Pretoria side. I'm an illustrator and I'm also a conceptual designer. So basically, I'm a conceptual designer by day and illustrator by night. I work in advertising, but then the work that I do around illustration, I own a brand called Just Illustrate, where I illustrate a lot of happy work, I like to call it. My work is pretty abstract and it just speaks to everything that happens around women, and I try to support women in every area of their lives. And I hope that my work can kind of help someone there by telling my stories through art. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Bright, you want to go next?
Thank you, Dillian. I'm Bright Shitemi from Kenya, Nairobi. I come from a background of mental health, running a youth organization that works in mental health awareness, creating support solutions for young people going through mental health challenges through affordable and holistic therapy solutions. And lastly, advocacy. So I'm really interested in this conversation because even for us, art is central to everything that we do, not only being part of healing, but also as a means of awareness creation. So I'm really appreciative. I also have a background in art. I like to think of myself as an artist, that everything I do, every program I'm involved in, it's created from the perspective of an artist. So I'm really glad to be here today. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Wabwira? Are you there, Wabwira? Have we lost him? Okay, it seems okay. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself when he comes back. But I think let's get into it. With both of you, mental health is a very important, I think, seldom realized, but also very important aspect of daily life, basically. And particularly as young people, Africa is a very young continent. Like I think 60% of the population is young people. 60% of that young people is also unemployed, so there's a lot of stress with young people. What are some, how have you personally basically battled or dealt with mental health in your careers as creators, or creators and entrepreneurs? Okay, well, it's back. Are you there? Sorry. Okay, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, sorry about my network. I hope it's disturbing, so I hope people don't mind. But yeah, my name is Wabire Joseph Ian. I'm a culture producer based in East Africa, running KQ Hub Africa. We are basically a culture collective working with artists and creatives to push culture forward. Also, we spark conversations with our projects, for instance, the Creative Talks Africa sessions, where we bring creatives together to have conversations about the future and also network. I'm also a creative economy consultant working with brands like YACC, British Council, European Union, on seeing how best we can push culture forward. For this particular conference, we collaborated with Creative Nestlings to be able to create a space, a digital safe space for conversations around the future of culture and how young creatives see themselves in that space. So I'm excited to see how this goes. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, before you got cut off, I was asking Nosipho and Bright around their personal experience with mental wellness, basically, as entrepreneurs. So I was able to get a response. So Nosipho can go first if you want.
Yeah. So I think that's such an interesting question, because I think like one of the things that I've learned about being a creative and living with mental illness is that, first of all, mental illness hits everyone different, whatever industry you're in, and especially in the creative industry. And I live by this, that you need to kind of like find your safe space, or find a space that kind of like a space of sanity and some sort. And like I would share my story on how I have dealt with mental illness in the industry and just as a creative in general. So I used to also like, because coming from a very religious background, I struggled to talk about mental illness because it's such a taboo being Black and having to deal with mental illness, and having to interpret that to your Black family is also like something that's very difficult. And so I found ways to be able to open up those conversations for people like me who couldn't do that. And I found like a space of art where I could share my story in a visual way. And I'm hoping that someone else will actually find that work and be able to be open about what they're going through as well. So basically, it's just being able to find your safe space, and a space that kind of like makes you sane, because it is difficult, yes. But if you can't talk about it, like for example, it took me like years to also be brave enough to talk about it and be able to create discussions around it. But it also took me to find that one element that works for me. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you're a writer, write about it, and whatever type of healing that you can find in those type of things that you do will surely help you. And it's part of talking about it. Not everyone will openly talk about it. Some people talk about it through art, through music, and through any type of art, or even like any other type of mediums that you feel like this is the only way that I can express myself. So I would tell people to just talk about it, and however you wish and however it suits you as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I think it's in the creative industry, mental health is a huge challenge, and people hide behind work, alcohol, or drugs. If you're in the ad industry, I'm sure you've heard the stories of that environment and stuff. And it's a real big challenge. And I think I'm glad that someone like you is there to advocate and create positive work for people to feel better about themselves, and just also look in the mirror, basically. And I think that's super, super important work. But we'll get more into that as we go. Bright, what has been your experience with mental health and stuff?
Yeah, so first of all, I love to say that mental health issues affect everyone. be it rich, poor, well-educated, non-educated. It affects everyone. And for me, my journey my experience was what prompted me to start this organization. Right from losing 5 friends to suicide, unfortunately, in a very short span period of 5 years, and realizing that all these people were young people in the most productive ages of between 19 to 25. And so you ask yourself, why are we the most affected as young people? And as I sat one day in my room thinking, okay, as I go through my own challenges, even what are the solutions around me? What is the ecosystem of mental health support around me? And realizing that really there are no structures to support mental health, and the investment from government, unfortunately, is very, very low. And so this prompted me now to even start this organization with a collection of friends, and we started the journey. And we realized that number one is the huge information gap among people of all creeds and all about what mental health is. And so that is where we started to raise awareness. And secondly, after raising awareness and opening people up to the conversation, it's what are the solutions then that you have for all these people? And so it's been a beautiful journey. But even as we work in mental health, you're bound to also be affected. There is burnout. There is all that. There is the issue of taking on a huge load from the challenges people are going through. So it's also realizing that taking care of your mental health is much more like taking care of your physical body. How you prevent yourself from getting malaria by using a net. It's how you can take care of your mental health by doing certain things. And so it's a conversation that needs to be had. It's a conversation that we need to open up to, especially the young people, because it's cliche that we are the next generation, but we really are. And so if we can't have this conversation now, then we're headed for a crisis. Thank you.
Cool. And Wabira? We lost him again.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's Kampala internet companies must do better. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll chime in a little bit there. I think for a long time, I also was on this journey of trying to do too much and taking on a load, and then you'd have burnout, and you would have what do you call it? You miss deadlines, not because you can't do the work, but because, well, you're just not mentally there. And I think it took a long time to really get there. And then last year, in an effort to help myself, I tried to, I founded, I tried to create a company around mental health for creatives. And that morphed into partnering up with a colleague to create basically what you call it, a platform to make mental health, more mental wellness tools to be more accessible and stuff, because I wanted to do my own anxiety issues and all that kind of stuff. So, and it took a long time to kind of really recognize what that is. I did a lot of Googling, talking to people, trying to speak to as many people as possible and having a conversation around what is going on, why do I get burnt out quickly and all that kind of stuff, why do I freak out easily, yeah, and also like the control issues and everything. And then they were like, you have anxiety issues. These are some of the coping mechanisms you should be using to deal with that kind of anxiety attacks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is an interesting journey, I think, for people to go through, and we seldom really go through it. Yeah, but Wabir is back. Yeah, I was still on the first question, Wabir, on how have you personally dealt with mental health and stuff?
Yeah, I think first of all, like Bright said, I think we need to recognize that mental health affects every one of us. And as a culture producer, one of the things that I grapple with is understanding my own surrounding and trying to think about the people that I work with and also going through the same things. And of course, some of the things that bring in issues of mental health, issues around finance, issues around sustainability. And sometimes as creators, when we look at things going around us, we tend to sort of like be very introspective, and sometimes due to the fact that we think them through, at the end of the day, they affect us mentally, So I think, like Bright said, mental health is everyone's problem. But in terms of as a culture producer, of course, I work with a number of creatives and artists, and having to understand some of the situations they go through, and trying to see how best I can offer support. But it's a very serious issue, and I think as a community, we need to find ways of how to sort of like come to the support of some of the creators and artists that are within our communities, But as a culture producer and also as an organization, we do foster conversations. We do create safe spaces where we talk openly about things that could potentially create or be sort of like fertile ground for mental illness. For instance, we openly talk about failure, and I think one of the things that most creators or most young people are listening to us today, they grapple with is understanding that the two aspects of failure and success work hand in hand, So I think that's also one of the reasons, that's one of the things that actually triggers mental health. But beyond that, as artists, they think more in general about everything happening around them. And due to COVID-19, there's been a lot of issues of mental health because there are a lot of things that were happening. You remember the Black Lives Matter period, a lot of young creators were subjected to some of these things. We were watching all these things on TV, but also the climate crisis issue, it is also a risk side, but also the financial hardships that we had to go through during this pandemic, So I think we have to recognize that it's there, and we have to find ways of how to create safe spaces where we can share, because I think when we come together like this, we do try to unburden some of the things, because we get to that understanding that we all go through the same things. And I think that way it sort of like buys us time to process everything that is happening around us.
No, that's very true. Yeah, I mean, as for creative nestlings, I have to talk to creators on a daily basis and really basically try and help as much as possible. There's a lot of anxiety that people have to deal with financially, personally, in their communities, where they're staying, what they're working on, rent is due, and all that kind of stuff. So definitely there's a need for that safe space, dialogue space, and a space for that continued interventions, basically, as things go by. I mean, with Nosipho, with your work, you mentioned that you try and create as much positive work as possible. And then also you are part of the, what do you call it, the mental health, the minority mental health advocates. Yes. So take us through your work as an illustrator, and then this organization that you're part of, or this community that you're part of, and what are some of the things that you guys are doing in terms of helping people understand mental health, particularly young people, particularly minorities. How do you guys work? Yeah, how do you personally work, and then how do you work with the organization?
Yeah. Okay. So with the organization, it's a lot of like collaborative work that I do with them, and just being part of that community to create a safe space for young people, to kind of like give them hope that they're not alone, that they're not fighting a battle by themselves. So the whole thing is just to support them with resources and having like a person, a peer that they can talk to. So we are like those people who are there to be peers and kind of like create a safe space for them and open up conversations around mental illness, and share a lot of positive work with them as well, to kind of like remind them every day that you are not fighting anything by yourself, that you have a whole community, and you have a whole community of a safe space where you can sort of like just, share your emotions and not have to die alone, right? So my work, when I initially started creating, it was just about mental illness, but I also just started jumping into a whole lot of other stuff that we go through as women, that it's so hard to share or open up conversations like that. But I mean, we all have to start somewhere. And I feel like that's my part of that, or a role that I play in making sure that I am part of the community, I'm part of the conversation, and I'm part of the awareness as well. So my work is like very abstract. the reason why my work is like usually a lot of it is influenced by a style called surrealism. So surrealism is supposed to kind of like, there's a certain emotion that it's supposed to get out of you, but I took the human factor out of it because there is no image or a picture that actually symbolizes mental illness. Everyone deals with it different, and it's such an emotional thing that it can't be described in a human factor. And so I wanted to share feelings in an abstract way, and hoping that some people can't even describe what they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And to be able to share that same visually and be like, you don't have to understand people, you just have to be there for them, and creating those imagery that invokes some sort of like emotion and make you feel safe. And I use a lot of like bright colors to kind of like spread out like a lot of positivity, and not to actually, so people learn that mental illness is not a dark thing and it's not the end of the world, that you can actually like learn a lot from it, and you can also take it as a positive thing and something that you can heal from, and that there are processes and there are ways and there are people who are there to help you and talk you through it, and knowing that this is a space where I can be open as possible. So I wanted to create that for people, and also like just share my story, because I was also like, I struggled with a lot of mental illness, like growing up, and I wanted to find ways to share my story, but not just sharing, but also allow people to also be okay and know that this is a space where you can share as well, and all of that stuff. So yeah, so that's what my work is. So a lot of people would comment about how it's sometimes scary, and I was like, but that's just what mental illness is. Sometimes it's just a scary thing. And I was like, I was hoping like with art, so the use of lines, I use very soft lines to kind of like invoke like a softness, like I am there for you. I use bright colors to invoke a very bright and happy emotion, so that you kind of feel a bit safe and you feel like, oh, it's gonna be okay, I'm not alone, and all that stuff. So that's what my work is about. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, definitely art therapy is an important practice that we've seen work many times and stuff, and is universally easier to translate. And I think it also breaks the taboo of what mental illness is and therapy and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty amazing work and stuff. Yeah. Right. With your company, you guys actually have a hotline. You post a lot of content around therapy, trying to demystify some of that information. How has that been received, and how are you now taking that further using technology, basically?
Yeah, so before I even get there of how it's been received, it's how have we been able to communicate to the masses, and especially the youth, about mental health? And it just goes back to art. So we do a lot of music, we do poetry. We actually have an event called the Cradle Arts Festival, which is an event where we bring young artists, and there's so many creatives in Kenya with content who lack platforms and who also express themselves using their work. And these are very powerful pieces that are able to transcend time and space, and reach out to people in a very powerful way and have them open up about their mental health. So art has been a central tool for us to raise that awareness and reach people. And what we've seen in the last 3-4 years is a lot of young people especially are more willing to have this conversation. Even the corporate world is now adopting the conversation and needing it in their spaces. So we were able with our company to create a hybrid model where we work with corporates and you have an income generating activity from them just by talking about mental health. So in a way, we get to market our services as we raise awareness, and people are reaching out even from the corporate side, and still go to the community and do the same, and using art as a central way to raise awareness. Now, even now within the Facebook Accelerator program, we've been able to develop a digital tool and mental health app that's going to be available on Android, on iPhone, but also if someone doesn't want to have an app, they can access it on the web. It's called BOMA. So BOMA being a community and a safe space. So away from being a platform where someone can reach out for support for a therapist, it's a platform where someone can reach out for to a rafiki. A rafiki is a friend, or usually for us, it's someone with a lived experience, or someone who's a caregiver, or someone who's a mental health advocate. So you realize that for most Africans, therapy is a foreign concept, yeah. But people relate to stories, people relate to experiences from others. So when they see a familiar face, when they see a Mr. Benjamin on the platform who went through depression, and they can relate with that, they're easily able to reach out to them. So we have that Rafiki tool that people are able to reach out to, and they act as a buffer between them and professional help. So you reach out to someone who's able to guide you, give you the initial support, and then refer you for therapy. But more importantly is having the technological tool as a platform where people can interact with creative work from artists all over Africa. So in the initial phase, we are working with Kenyan artists, but our goal is to reach out to the whole of Africa, and using the partnerships that we have and the people that we meet, like Creative Nestlings, we believe we'll be able to reach out to the whole of Africa, have all these artistic content in one platform that people can interact with. People in our lowest of moments, it's music, it's poetry, it's art pieces that gets us, soothed or comforted. So we are working on, we have that platform now, and we're looking to scale it now starting next year, where people can go into one central point and access all resources on mental health, and have it branded in a way that's, because again, mental health being a highly stigmatized issue, needs to be, the way you communicate to people needs to be different. Even your communication, your branding needs to be able to be easily relatable to people. So that's what we are trying to achieve, and we believe we'll get there soon.
Yeah, no, that's definitely amazing. I mean, Nosipho, that's another platform for you to push your work through. Yeah.
That's so
You-
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, back to you. Yeah, Wabure is still there. Okay. So before I go back before I go to Wabure, with Nosipho, with your peers, right? What has it been like being a creative? How are they receiving the work, right? So your peers in the creative industry, how are they receiving the work and commenting on that? Because I always find it's a bit of a taboo to discuss mental health amongst creatives. They're like, no, you'll be fine. Go take a nap, or here's some alcohol, go for a jog or whatever. How's that reception been? Because I think it's important for young people to see what's happening in terms of when we speak, what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think it's been very difficult to try and like reach out to creatives through art or through any, like, it's so hard. And yes, you're right. Creatives, we do spend a lot of our times in alcoholic places, because I think that's just a way we deal with stuff. Because even in the workplace, they provide us with alcohol to kind of like, just when it's just been like a lot, right? So yes, it's been like a medication for mental health and mental illness. So I think having to open a platform like this, it's been hard, and also to try and make people understand what my work is meant for, and teaching also people what art is and all that stuff. So it's not only the mental illness aspect, but it's also just teaching our creatives about art and what art is supposed to do to you, right? And I think like it's been so hard for them to like understand, and it is getting better now because people are starting to understand why my work exists, and they are receiving it and responding. I've gotten like a lot of responses, and not just like South African or African, like even beyond Africa. Like I get a lot of like positive response with my work. And I've had like people share stories also of how my work has kind of like changed their lives. and how they feel so safe. That's my work is so beautiful. It invokes some sort of feeling. And I always say this, I'm like, if I could do that, then my work is done. That's it. That's why my work exists, for people to be feeling that way. And when I get that type of feedback, I think it makes me feel good, because it means that I am actually doing something, you know. And I think within the creatives, it's just a matter of, we are evolving. And I think we are learning that you don't have to always sit next to a therapist. Yes, you should go to a therapist if you feel like you need one. But I feel like people should be able to find therapeutic things beyond just sitting in a couch and talking to somebody. They need to know that mental health resources are accessible wherever, on social media, digitally, outside of digital, and everywhere else. So, and I think like people are starting to learn that. And I think like also with what Bright was saying, creating stuff like apps, it's really like one of the things that we are doing to try and make sure that because it's very hard to go to a therapist. I'm not gonna lie. It's very hard for someone who is diagnosed with depression to realize that they are diagnosed and they need to maybe be taking medication, because some people will go through that route. And all of that, just accepting that you could be battling with mental illness is so hard to accept. And I think if we have these platforms where people can sort of like already dive into the healing process without having to call a therapist or pay a lot of money, because they are also like very costly. Yes, there's also like public ones that are accessible as well. But I think just the strength of being able to leave your house and go speak to someone is very hard. And having platforms, because people with mental illness, they do struggle also with a lot of social gatherings and all that stuff. And having to do it behind your phone or do it behind your computer, I think we are already starting. And I think like even my work is already starting to do that, where it's just in a click on your phone and you're like, actually, you know, this is my space. This is where I feel comfortable to share my story and find my healing. So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, with the conversations that you're having with fellow creatives, how has mental health, the discussions, how have they been amongst the peers in the creative industry that you're meeting?
I think the two speakers really mentioned very amazing issues. And I think we are our brother's keeper. And for us in the spaces that we've tried to curate, that is something that has come out very highly, that we all go through the same problems. And there's nothing unique about anyone's experience or lived experience. And therefore, we all have to be to take care of each other, you know. But also, I like what Nxele said. We have to find other ways of how to sort of like get back to normal without necessarily having to think that everything that is happening to us would need a mental doctor or something. I think sometimes we are depressed because we think there's only one way of solving something. And yet if you did it in a different way, something probably could change, you know. So I think we have to take on more ways of how to approach mental illness or mental health issues without necessarily having to use the usual ways. Some of the things we could think about are maybe taking walks. And I think these are some of the things that have also come up very, very frankly and openly in the conversations that we've tried to nurture. Like, how do we sort of like, because if we're talking about solutions for mental illness and health, how do we find those solutions, and where are the places where we can find sort of like sanity, you know? And some of the things that of course come up are things like art, you know, things like volunteering your time to something, and you know, but also as we have these conversations, I think we also have to tackle what is the root cause, because once we only focus on the solutions, we forget that they actually rather, once we only focus on the problem, we forget that there are also certain solutions from another place. And I think the other aspect would be like, for instance, for most artists, Some of their challenges, of course, could be financial, like Dillian, you said, like you're busy worrying about rent, you're busy worrying about all this stuff, and you're asking yourself, how do I get myself back, you know? But when you have a conversation with a culture producer like myself, because I know what it is that you're going through, I think we can all come to a conclusion, or rather, we may not come to a conclusion, but at least I might have some sort of like advice that can help you push yourself to some space. So essentially, the point is nurturing those spaces and also finding other ways of how to solve our issues without necessarily having to look at the most anything, like everything happens to us and then the first thing we think is maybe going to a therapist and all that, but also looking into the things that might not be, because some mental illness issues are not necessarily because maybe you don't have money. Sometimes it's just you being overworked, and maybe you just need to hit stop on that and move on to something different, you know. Sometimes it's about where we focus, the way we curate our timelines. Most young people come to me and they're like, I want to be like this guy. I want to be. So we tend to compare ourselves so much with other people and try to put ourselves into those spaces without necessarily having to think about ourselves and how we can deaccelerate and focus on our own journeys, you know. So I think also for the creators out there that are listening to us, they have to find give attention to things that give you sanity. Do not give attention to things that don't give you sanity, because at the end of the day, they're going to accelerate your problems. And these are conversations we've been having. For instance, for my case, I find Instagram to be.
I think we've lost connection. Wabir. Oh, we lost him again.
Yeah.
You're muted, Wabir.
My network is so shitty, so I hope you guys can excuse me. But I was just talking about this. I was saying we have to find ways of curating our timelines and giving our attention to the things that matter to us. Most creators on Instagram are probably comparing themselves with others, and at the end of the day, it also accelerates their problem. For my case, I try to focus, or I try to follow people that actually give me energy, not people that are draining me and taking away energy from me, because I don't want to be in that unhealthy comparisons and all that. And I think that's also important for us to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely how we curate what we consume is very important for our mental health and stuff. I mean, speaking about what we curate, 2020 has been an interesting year for mental health generally. I mean, I'll start with Bright. Bright, how has it been for you as an entrepreneur personally, but then also as a person now who will look up to get some sort of sustenance for their mental wellness? How has it been 2020 with all its journey?
Yeah, so 2020 and with COVID, you can't mention 2020 without mentioning COVID. So it's been that COVID year where we were hit hard, especially now. For us, initially, our model was a lot of physical engagement, a lot of therapy sessions, going to spaces for awareness events. And we were really building our kind of in terms of an income generating activity with corporates along those lines. And when COVID hit as a business, initially we were hit hard. And for some moments, for a period of time, we had our brains kind of frozen and thinking, okay, what do we do? And trying to realize, look around and find out what's going on with the world. What is this thing? Is it going to be here for the next 1 month, for the next 2 months? So you sit at home wondering. And as that happens, you realize that your helpline is blowing up because guys are going through challenges. And for us, it was a time for us, even as much as it was tough for everyone, to rise up to the occasion, because these new situation where people had to be isolated was accelerating so many mental health issues among people. And for those already with lived experiences, now with limited access to medication, now with things sitting around, things that trigger them, It was very high. And now you have, again, now other issues coming up: teenage pregnancy, sexual and gender-based violence. So many of these issues building up. People are losing jobs now. There's a lot of anxiety and stress among business owners and amongst even the employees who are now losing jobs. And it is a very, 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 I would say, toxic environment. And for us, I remember looking at our numbers, and our call line had gone up by over 200%. Yeah. So this is a lot of people that need support. And it was an opportunity now for us to even now look for solutions to scale. And one of the ways was now the digital platform. And as Obiro was saying, most of the triggers, or most of the people who are going through mental health challenges, some of it can be solved through strong social support systems, because it's how you take care of your mental health before you get to that tipping point. So things that lead to mental illness are various. There's environmental factors, there is biological factors. So the people who are born prone to a certain mental illness, and some of them will need medication even to get through. But not all mental illnesses or not all mental health challenges will need medication. Some of them, it's about having that strong support system. And even for those who need medication, it's also about having that strong support system. And that's why for us, it was the perfect opportunity now to create a platform where we are creating strong peer-to-peer support systems, so that all these other issues are filtered out, and only the issues that need a professional intervention then get to rise to that level. And with that, you're able to also, because look, let's not kid ourselves, our governments, it's gonna take a lot of time for them to open up to even increase investment in some of these issues, because there's so much, they're strained. Corruption is high in some of our countries. And so it's about us now looking for how do we first of all take care of our tribe, our community, ourselves as young people, as artists. How do you, as an artist, for example, do away with that culture? Because there's a culture among the creatives about drug abuse. It's a cool thing, to be partying till I don't know what time, to be taking weed, to be taking alcohol in a certain way. Some even are given payment in alcohol for their work. So it's also having people create their own value system and understanding that, look, I don't have to fit into what is branded as an artist. I have to take care of my mental health, and these are the things I have to do. I have to exercise. I have to eat well. I have to, like Obiro was mentioning, what am I looking at on social media? Very simple things that help us take care of our mental health. And when you're really overwhelmed, who's that support system around you that will listen to you and offer that support? And once you have a good mental health going, then it gives you an opportunity now to even rise your craft, rise your work to the next level, because you're really at a good mind frame to accomplish and realize your dreams.
Yeah, and also, sorry, and also I think you mentioned very great points, because when you talk about mental health and then you study, most of the creators, or most people, even me myself, I've been prone to a certain problem, but it was basically because I was trying to constantly compare myself to someone else, and trying to think I can be them overnight. But I think also creatives have to appreciate the process of growth, but also, like you say, there's that issue, there's the mental health illness that comes to you just because maybe something happened in your life that you can never change, and that is part of you. So those could say need safe spaces to have sort of like spaces of vulnerability, and we've created those, for instance, here. With the kind of work that we do, we try to bring creators together, and some of the conversations we have about a failure, for instance, people have started out creative ventures and they've not seen, and that alone has sort of like put them on their off, and they're like, what, I don't think I can make it in life, but having that space where there's another person talking about the same issue, the same journey they've gone through, and things not working out, you get to see that actually there is that unanimous, acceptance that we all into this, and not that you're the only one facing that. So I think that's also important to note.
Nosipho, I mean, in terms almost up, but I just want to check on you on, in terms of COVID-19 and impact on you as a creative in your work. So how's that been for you with 2020, basically?
Yeah,
For me,
I think for me, like my biggest struggle as a creative is just creating during a time like this. I think COVID, and I say this for everyone, I think it brought out the biggest anxiety there is in the world. I think the fact that this thing just came out of nowhere and we all had to just now be tied to our rooms and comply, and it was a scary thing and we didn't know what it was. And now we're working from home and having to even wake up in the morning and try to create as a creative is almost impossible. And that's all because of all the anxiety around everything that was going on. And I think not only COVID, because COVID came with a lot of negative stuff around it. And I feel like everyone was just going through it all and just trying to figure out this new norm. And how do I still create during a time like this? How do I even wake up in the morning? I think I struggle mostly to even wake up in the morning and open my laptop and work, and knowing that all my meetings have moved online. And having, like, for example, I know for creatives don't like being tied down. And I know for a fact that I can't be tied down to an office, a space. And having to create where I stay and wake up has just been a lot. And I think that it's been so challenging also with everything going on, and the fact that we had salary cuts. A lot of the companies had salary cuts, especially creative companies losing brands and all of that stuff. Even just opening my iPad and being like, let me create work that is positive is almost impossible during a time like this, because I think that a lot of the work that we create comes from a space that we're in. Like, I know for a fact that if I'm feeling good, I'm most likely to produce good content, positive content. But if the whole world is just down and you are going through it as well, it's very hard to kind of like create work that is meaningful and work that can help someone, because you are also in a space where you need to be helped and you need to be working through all this anxiety and this new norm and the way of working. And I also struggled with the change. I think the change for me was just the worst, having to switch from this to this. It was, however, like a bit easy in terms of like the working from home, because working in the creative industry is a bit flexible in terms of how we work. Even like where I work, it was easy to just go on and work from home because it's something that we had adopted way before COVID. So I think that kind of prepared us. And having been such a digital agency, it also allowed us to kind of like go in and just, you know, get used to it faster. But still on top of that, like having to deal with your mental health and everything else that's going on, and the new change and this new disease, and not having to access a lot of stuff. And I think like Bride also said that even with accessing like the access of medication, a lot of people who are on medication couldn't access that. And I feel like also with COVID, everything just became about COVID. And it was so hard for like hospitals and doctors to kind of prioritize everything other than COVID. I know for a fact that when I tried to go to a doctor during this time, especially in lockdown, when we're still in like very tight lockdown, it was hard to go there for anything else other than COVID. They would literally dismiss you and ask you, don't come in if you don't have COVID. And I feel like that's just been so hard for people who are going through it all, people with anxiety, having to stay sane. And I think the fact that a lot of people who lost their jobs had to go home, and going back home to a dysfunctional family. And I know for a fact a lot of young creatives, they go to their jobs as a sort of escape, as a sort of sanity and all that stuff. And having to be now dragged back home to a place where you kind of escape because it's not good for your mental health. And now you're back in this family, and now it's just like a lot, and it just kind of adds on to that, and everything becomes hard. And I think like it's just been so challenging, and mostly, and I emphasize this, to just create as a creative, it's just been almost impossible. Business has been slow as well, and all of those things, it's just been hard. And it's just a matter of getting up in the morning that is almost impossible. And I think that's the first motivation. If you can't even get off bed, there's nothing you can create. And I think also the spaces of being able to talk about how we're feeling about this have not been so open to be like, how is this affected us? How is this affecting you? Are you managing and stuff like that? And I think like even at work, people have been trying to create those platforms to be like, let's talk about how you're feeling. How is it working from home? Are you able to create? And all of that stuff has just been like a lot. So
yeah. It's been a crazy time for everybody, and also increasing all anxieties and stuff. So yeah, but at least we're here, alive, and continue to push ourselves and push everybody else. We're out of time, but Bright, I just want to ask you. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird question to ask. What are the two things that you think any person that's going through kind of any sort of mental health issue and stuff should at least try in the beginning, just to end off the conversation? Just advice. Yeah.
Yeah. The most important thing in a situation like that, if you're going through a challenge, is just to breathe, actually, because the key thing that affects people is anxiety, or if you're depressed, just breathe. Yeah, just feel free, take in the moment, accept the moment as it is, and just breathe. That's a very simple thing to do, but it really helps people deal with their mental health and then find a solution. The next thing is to either you can take a walk, turn to music, turn to something that helps you. So you'll always find someone has something to turn to. It can either be music, it can be walking out, it can be just going out to your veranda alone is a first step to getting a solution. Especially people who are going through depression, they find it difficult to even get out of their beds. So if you can just master the energy to get out and stand and breathe the air outside, that's a first step towards your healing.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Thank you for doing this conversation, both of you. We've lost what we were again because of connection, but thank you so much for participating in the conversation. And yeah, take care.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.